What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a film that has been on my list of movies to watch for a while now. And with it being Pride Month, I saw this film referenced multiple times because there is a lot of queer representation in this film. And so I was really excited to get to watch it. And I have seen one of this director's other films. The director is Gregg Araki, and I've seen the film Smiley Face, which tonally is much different than this movie. It's like a stoner comedy that's really overblown. I love it a lot because it has a lot of really hilarious things under the surface that are really cleverly written, and it's just a really fantastic experience. But this is a movie that I've heard praised over and over and over again, and I've really wanted to see it for a very long time, and I'm excited that I finally got the chance to watch it. And the film I'm going to be discussing today is Mysterious Skin. Mysterious Skin is directed by Gregg Araki. A teenage hustler and a young man obsessed with alien abductions cross paths together, discovering a horrible, liberating truth. So, as I said, I've been very excited to watch this movie because people have recommended it for a very long time. I've seen it on a lot of like the best indie cult films of all time. So I've been very excited to see it, and I am happy to say this movie was absolutely incredible. It's devastating, it's traumatizing, it's beautiful, but it is so well executed and well directed and well performed, and it says something so powerful with its source material. It became an instant favorite film of mine, one that would be very difficult to revisit because of just how insane the subject matter is, but I'll get into it more in the review. The film tells the story of Brian and Neil, who we're introduced to at the beginning of the film as young children. Brian is who we're introduced to first, who is a young kid who lives at home with his mom and dad. His dad seems to not be the greatest father. His mom really loves him a lot. He lives at home with his sister. His dad forces him to go play baseball. He doesn't want anything to do with sports. He doesn't want anything to do with that lifestyle. And one day something happens to him while he's at the baseball field, but he doesn't know what happens. He wakes up in a closet. He has a bloody nose. He doesn't know what happened to him. He saw some light. He saw a shadow of a figure, and that's it. That's all we know about what happened to him. Well, then we're introduced to Neil, who later is played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but this is the younger version of himself. He is the best player on the same baseball team. He's the star player. Everyone else is kind of falling apart, and the baseball coach takes a liking to him. Well, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, through narration at the beginning of the film, lets us know that from a very young age that he was interested in men, and that he's always been attracted to men, and that he is gay. And so we learned that very early on about his character, and he was very attracted to like older men throughout the younger years of his life. Well, one day his coach asks him to come home with him, and through a series of events we learn that he has been sexually abused by this coach over and over again. And the story of the film is that these two characters, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, Neil, and Brady Corbet's character, Brian, have both been involved with that coach, but Brian doesn't remember anything that happens. He actually thinks that he has been abducted by aliens when he was younger and that he was experimented on, and the two don't cross paths through most of the movie, but it is about two people who have gone through horrifying trauma and sexual abuse that have experienced it in two very different ways, and how that has impacted their lives in two very different ways. And it's a coming of age story. It's a story about queer friendship. It is a story about abuse and overcoming trauma. There are so many themes that this film explores and unpacks through its entire almost 2-hour runtime. It's a film that really moved and broke me multiple times while I was watching it, because knowing the trauma that these children suffered at the hands of an older man, that like the film doesn't really give us much insight into his character because it's not really what's important. What is important is seeing what happened to these kids and what has happened to them. And you get Brian's character, who is a very mild-mannered kid who's kind of to himself. He's perceived as very nerdy, and he takes an infatuation with this series that's on TV about this young girl in another town who says she was abducted by aliens. The two of them become friends, and it's really just him trying to find out what happened to him, which obviously, since we know what happened to him at very early on in the film, it's his character trying to uncover that because he has suppressed this trauma that he's experienced and tried to like explain it away in a different way without having to grapple with the horrific reality of what happened to him. And I think what's interesting about his character is it's almost implied that his character is more asexual, that he's not interested in sexual interaction. And seeing as how that could have come and stemmed from what has happened to him, or if that's always been a part of who he is as a person, is really interesting psychologically. And knowing that he went through that at a very young age, being an asexual person, is just like knowing that he suppressed that and pushed it back into his mind and is trying to process it in a different way is really interesting. And then you have Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character on the other side of the situation, who, as I said at the beginning of the film, expresses that he is gay, has taken interest in older men, and in his life now, he's working as a male sex worker. He goes out in his very small town that he lives in. He's pretty much hooked up with every single guy that lives in the small town. At one point, he ends up moving into the big city with Michelle Trachtenberg's character, and he starts working out there as well, and how it's almost as if he uses sex as a way to take the power back in his life, because for so long he didn't really have that control, and he didn't have that ability to control really what was going on, because an adult was telling him what to do. And so looking at that was really interesting. He has a young gay friend that he spends a lot of the movie with, who then comes into contact with Brian's character. That's a really great depiction of queer friendship, and I think the movie does it in a way that is so eye-opening and enlightening and beautiful. And more movies need to have queer friendships that are shown on screen, and it's done in a way that I really liked a lot. Obviously, with this being a coming-of-age film, there's some sappier moments. There's some moments where the dialogue delivery might come across as a little hokier to some people. But I think in its presentation and its visual style, especially with the cinematography, there's a lot of the scenes that it almost looks like the characters are staring directly in the camera. And there's something about that being very unconventional of normal narrative film style really kind of shakes you to your core while you're watching it. And it really left a very deeply kind of personal impact, where you're sitting with this and you just feel it. You can feel the raw, palpable emotion that the director is trying to get by with this really horrible things that happened to these two young men early in their lives when they were children. And it's just a really moving piece of film, and the subject matter is obviously very heavy. It's very dark, it's very disturbing, but not the whole movie feels that way. There's very light-hearted moments through the movie. There's moments of real beautiful intimacy between friends that care about each other, and there's a lot of those moments intermingled in with the horrific thing that happened to these kids. And a lot of it is through the dialogue. It's not always showing you these horrible things that are happening. A lot of it is explained through revisiting the trauma, and I think that that's a really interesting way that the director portrayed this information to the audience. And like I said, it is a movie that will really shake you up, but it'll leave an impression. And I think these types of movies, they can come across as really hokey if they're not handled right. And there was something so raw and realistic about the way that this material was conveyed. And I thought all the performances were really fantastic. As I said, I really enjoyed the visual style. I know a lot of people complain that there's a lot of like really weird fade outs with the way that the movie was edited, but it didn't really bother me. It just felt like a different way of doing a scene transition. It didn't really bother me at any moment. And like I said, I was just so enamored with the subject matter and thought that it was handled really well and showed the experience that these two young men went through when they were children, the horrible, awful thing that they experienced and how they overcame that and are trying to cope with it in their own lives. And I think the third act conclusion of this movie packs a really intense punch that was so beautiful and really well handled, and I just loved this movie a lot. I think that it's saying something really powerful. I think that it shows how people overcome trauma in very different ways, and the horrors of child abuse in this very horrific manner. And it's a really phenomenal film. Not everybody is going to be able to watch this one and handle this one, but it is a really incredible movie. And if it's something that you think that you can manage to watch, I would highly recommend it, because I think you'll pull something really powerful out of it. So have you seen Mysterious Skin? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was absolutely amazing. I'm looking forward to watching more of Gregg Araki's work, because I thought this was fantastic. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.